Hey, this is Mike Sager. Welcome to Virtual Readings. Today I'll be reading from my book Scary Monsters and Super Freaks. The excerpt is from the story Raised in Captivity. He rode out to quarantine on a bus full of stinking guys, all of them under 21, convicted as adults of felony crimes. He was going to the Riverside Correctional Facility to be processed. It was 2 hours away from the suburb of Detroit where he'd grown up with his mom and his little brother. The town had 4 prisons. Locals and inmates alike pronounced it Ionia. The state of Michigan owned him now. Gary Wayne Fannin pressed his nose to the vent by the window, seeking fresher air. He wanted to scream, to cry, to smash his head through the glass. He'd drawn the mandatory penalty for his crime, life in prison without parole. It was a death sentence, really, a long, slow death by natural causes. He stepped off the bus, his wrist shackled to a belt around his waist, his legs chained together at the ankles. He shuffled forward in a single file line through a door marked intake. They removed his shackles, locked the heavy gate behind him. They gave him his number, 189-196. He bent over, spread his cheeks and coughed. He got his blues. The shirts were too big. The pants were too small. The underwear was made by convicts in a factory for 28 cents a day. Since it was summer, August 20th, 1987 to be exact, his 19th birthday, they were giving out rubber flip-flops. He reached down into a huge laundry cart, held his breath against the smell. The rubber was worn, impressed with the toe prints of previous owners. Fuck it, thought Gary. Happy birthday to me. 1 week, 1 month, 2 months, 3. An 8 by 10 foot cell, 23 hours a day. No TV, no radio, no roommate. If you needed to piss, you used a plastic bottle. If you needed to do more, you had to bang on the door and wait for the guard. Sometime the guard wouldn't come, and you had to use your trash can. Then you'd tie up the plastic liner bag and throw it out the window into the courtyard. Why me, O Lord? Gary asked this many times. He made a list of everything he'd done wrong in his life, looking for the reason he was being punished. When he was 7, he'd broken a pinball machine in a bar his father had taken him to. When he was 12, he fell in with a bad crowd. They jimmied apartment doors, stole spare change and radios, rearranged furniture. Later, they stole car stereos and radar detectors. When he was 13, he smashed the front window of an apartment complex. The manager had denied his mother an application. He had a policy against renting to divorcees with kids. Before this, he'd been in trouble with the law only once, for shoplifting a pack of batteries from a drugstore. The cops never found the other item he'd taken, secret in his coat pocket, a small ceramic statue of a blond guy in a prison uniform with a ball and chain affixed around his ankle. Now it seemed like some episode of Tales from the Crypt, some eerie prophecy fulfilled. The guards at Riverside liked Gary. He was polite and well-mannered. He was white, as were most of the guards. This was his first offense. He seemed like a regular kid. He even volunteered to clean up the courtyard. He didn't get paid, but he was allowed to go outside by himself for an extra hour. He'd rake all the shit bags into a pile and place them in the dumpster. Then he'd mow the grass. At least it was something to do. One day, he was in his cell, and there was nothing to do. He was going insane. He'd written all the letters he could. His hand was numb and there was nothing to do. He was going insane. He'd read as many books as he could. His eyes were killing him. There was nothing to do, and the window was open, and the sun was shining. He wanted to be outside. He was going insane. A fly buzzed into his cell. It landed on the windowsill, on the bed, on the desk. Gary watched it. The fly rubbed its legs together. It flitted around nervously. Gary inched toward it, closer, closer. He tried to quiet his body and his mind, to make himself still like deep water, like Kane in the old TV show Kung Fu. He snapped out his hand and caught the fly. He put it in a large Doritos bag, purchased in the prison store. Contents devoured, the bag kept folded on the shelf for future use. He watched the fly buzz around inside the Doritos bag. Time passed. A bee flew into the cell. Gary watched it. He concentrated, trying to send the bee a telepathic message. Come to me. Come to me. The bee settled on the back of his hand. He cupped it in his palm, put it in the Doritos bag, the bee on one end, sectioned off with a pencil, and then the fly, and then a book to seal the opening, all of it on top of his desk. Gary watched the bee. He watched the fly. Every once in a while, he'd remove the pencil, open up the sections, and make them meet so they would fight. But they wouldn't. They just buzzed and walked around. Time passed. A wasp flew into the cell. The shit bags in the courtyard were like magnets for all these bugs. It was a regular insect zoo. Gary stalked the wasp across the room, caught it in the styrofoam cup. He put it in the Doritos bag. He watched some more. He set up fights between the wasp and the fly, and the wasp and the bee. The bee and the fly wouldn't fight, but the wasp, he would fight anybody. Gary took turns pitting the wasp against the fly and the wasp against the bee. That was the best match, the wasp against the bee. Lots of buzzing and stinging, just hours of amusement, you know? In the end, the fly got crushed. The bee suffocated. The wasp drowned in the styrofoam cup. By then, it was time for chow.